What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Shaka Antoine. In today's video, we're going to be talking about fishing from piers and the docks. Now, if this is the first video that you're seeing from my channel or this series, I decided to make a series that came about from a viewer's request, requesting that I expand more on the gear that I use. So I decided to make a series out of it. So if you check the one playlist that I currently have up, I decided to make this series of fishing various locations up and down the Northeast coast, and I put them all in that playlist. So make sure that you check out that playlist to get caught up on the previous videos that I've made regarding fishing gear and equipment that I use while fishing the Northeast coast. Oh, but first, before we go any further, like always, I want to ask you guys, can you please smash that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, make sure it's on all so that you get notified when I come out with the next video. I greatly appreciate it. Well, all right, let's get right into today's video. It's going to be a short one for you guys. And this topic, I just basically thought it up and decided that I'll add it into the series that I'm doing, which is fishing from a pier and docks. I'm going to add in docks as well. Now, again, this is going to be in my experiences and my tactics that I use from fishing from a pier anywhere between Massachusetts and all the way down to Virginia Beach. All right, so I'm just going to run through what I've seen and what I go through, what I basically observed and the tactics that I have used. And we're talking about up and down the Northeast coast, Cape Cod, Long Island, New York City, the East River, the Hudson, Staten Island, and all the way down. These tactics are pretty much the same and similar. The gear will be very specific at times, and there are some times it will be very different than what I'll be using anywhere else. You know, often the biggest decision that I find myself having to make when fishing from a pier or a dock is, should I use plugs, or should I use live bait, or should I be chunking with cut bait? That's usually the biggest decision that I have to make, even though those decisions are often made sometimes, not all the time, by what time of year it is, at what stage of the migration are the fish at that particular moment, and also which baits are around, whether it be mackerel, herring, or bunker. Very important to determine that, and that usually will help decide what I'm going to be using. But again, in general, that is the gist of it. Plugs, live bait, or cut bait. All right, so now let's get in a little bit to talking about the gear or the equipment that I would use to fish from a pier or a dock. The first thing that comes to mind is a net. You're gonna need a net, and especially based upon what type of pier, in terms of how far the water line is from the deck, will determine which type of net you're going to use, and it also may have to do towards preference. You know, I've used some nets from in New Jersey and Virginia, and right here in Coney Island, that I really don't like to use those types of nets, which is the basket type. You know, you got one big circle, you got rope tied to it, and then you have to lower it down and scoop up the fish. I really dislike those types of nets, but you know, those are the types of net that needs to be used, preferably, well, I believe it's from piers that have a long drop, because those ropes are really usually pretty long. I really don't like those because you typically would have to have someone else operate it while you're trying to, you know, control the fish. That's, you know, I've been the net guy in that situation, and I didn't like it. We used that, my father, my brother, and I. We were fishing from that naval base in Sandy Hook. My brother was in the Navy, so we had access to the tip. Oh man, I did not like using the net there, that type of a net there. And a lot of other places where the water line is not so far or that far from the deck, then you can get away with a pole. I'm a little more comfortable with using that type of a pole net, you know, like you would find on a boat, with just wearing an extended handle. A little more comfortable with that, but in general, I don't like to be the net guy. I don't enjoy it because I find it a little bit difficult, especially at night. You know, I have a video of Lou and I. We were fishing for eels, and you know, I was the guy that had to go down, and it was such an ordeal. It always usually is. It's a little easier to gaff, but you know, with regulations now, gaffs are not really used as much unless you know that you have a keeper there and you're going to be keeping it. And the gaff is a little bit more easier, but again, you want to make sure that you are getting a good gaff shot, preferably near the head, because you run the risk, even with any net really, of popping the line, letting the fish go. Big mess. So a net or a gaff is like number one. That's the number one that comes to my mind. Now for the rod and reel, fishing from a pier. Now I know in Cape Cod, that pier that's on the canal, I pretty much would use the same outfits that I would fish the rest of the canal. There's nothing specifically different. It just depends on how I'm fishing that pier, because that pier can be fished several different ways. You can plug it, or you can live bait it, and you can also chunk from it. But the one thing about that particular pier you have to keep in mind is that you will be fishing with a lot of other folks, and you know, almost anywhere on the canal, but you have to consider the current. Whatever type of fishing you're going to be doing, please know that you are going to have other fishermen around you trying to do the same thing. And the way that you would fish a spot that has really fast current is, of course, considering who's down current and who's up current from you. And just know that you're not going to be there alone. So get used to fishing with others and how the other fishermen fish that particular spot. It's very important. All right, now, so if I'm the rod that I would most likely go for in that scenario would be my heavier or my jigging rod. This is my Lammer Glass Carbon Surf, rated at 3 to 8 ounces. Rather, if I'm jigging it with the plug, or if I have live bait, you know, you get yourself a circle hook or choker hook, whatever's legal at the moment. You know, you hook the mackerel. Well, first you got to catch it, right? Let's talk about that. But you know what? I'll talk about the rig setup a little bit later. Right now, I'm just going to focus on the rod and the reel. From a pier, yeah, I would be doing the heavier setup or the jigging setup with my with the Stella 14K, and of course that one is spooled with 40-pound test slick. The leader for that one is going to be 100 pounds. That's what I would use to either jig or the live bait. I wouldn't use cut bait there. I don't fish cut bait on the canal. So typically on that particular location, yes, you want to be specific to the heavier gear, especially because of the current. You want to be able to, when you do get a fish, muscle them through the current and landing it. That's very important as well. In a place like the canal, you will have to walk the fish down current to land it on the rocks and then go around. Or if you have someone down there already, that's helpful. But if you're alone, just know that you will have to scale the dock down current to land your fish, which comes into play what I'm saying about fishing with others. Please consider that there will be other people there with you. You have to do a little do-si-do dance just to get your lines clear from theirs, so that you can land your fish. Which does point me to another point. That's another reason why I'm not so comfortable with fishing docks, is that the whole landing aspect. Is it a place where you can net it, or is it a place where you're going to have to walk it down current? Something to consider. So that's the rod and the reel. Now we're going to talk about the rigs that I will be using if I'm fishing from here. Now, being that we're talking about rigs, it's either going to be live bait or cut bait. All right. If I'm live lining bait, in some cases, as long as it's someplace not like the canal, for instance, if it's a place where the current is not as aggressive, I'll use my 2 to 6 Carnage 2 with the Saragossa 8K. And I will use it just like I'm plugging. Basically, I'll take whatever hook is legal at the moment, put it on my TA clip, and hook the live bait. Which live bait? Of course, that's going to be spot specific and the time of year. So in general, if we're talking about somewhere where there is mackerel, then you'll have to use a sabiki rig to catch the live bait first. And that's of course specific to the canal. You know, you have to get another rod. I prefer to use my 9-foot, my old school rod. I don't even use this rod no more, except for some specific conditions. I'll get my 9-foot pin. What is that thing? Forget. I'll use my 9-foot pin rod, get a sabiki rig, put an ounce to maybe a 2-ounce sinker on there. Gotta catch some mackerel, get some mackerel, then transfer it over to my other rod setup to live line. Hook them, send it out there. Now that method can be used anywhere that you're planning on fishing live bait, where the current is not so aggressive. If the current is really aggressive, then I'll switch over to the heavier rod, the Lama class. Now that's for live bait. Now for cut bait, I'm just about exclusively will be fishing the heavier setup, which would be the Lama Glass Carbon Surf, but I would not be using the Stella. I only use the Stella on the canal for reasons of it's my best equipment, so I need my absolute strongest and best equipment for the canal. So I exclusively fish the Stella on the canal. So for any other situation where I need heavy equipment, I'll go right ahead and strap on my Slammer 3 7500. And now I believe I have, do I still have that one spooled with 50? No, I did re-spool it. It is spooled with 40-pound test slick. So yeah, I'll strap that on, and then the type of rig that I will be using is, it depends on the length, but it's a standard striped bass rig, not a high-low, but you know, you have I will tie a three-way swivel. Well, I'll have my sinker really close to the three-way, maybe about 6 inches away from that. But now where I have the hook will depend upon how aggressive current is. In general, if you're fishing a spot that has a really aggressive current, then you're going to have a short, or at least I am. I'm going to have a pretty short leader from where I'm tying them from the main to the hook. Kind of short. But if the current is not as aggressive, then I'll have a longer one. And that's to prevent it from helicoptering and just to kind of keep the bait near the bottom. And of course, the ounce will depend upon, again, you know, where I'm fishing and how deep I know it is. I've fished up to 8 ounces on some spots on the Hudson. And in some places south of the Hudson, 5 ounces hold just fine. There are some places where you can get away with 4. That's why I'm using the heavier rod. Remember, the ounces that I would typically use is between 4 all the way up to 8 ounces. So the heavier rod would be needed. Those are the 2 types of rigs that I would use for cut bait. Now, my decision, the last point I'm going to be talking about, is the decision to when to fish from a pier and a dock within the migratory season. Now, I primarily fish plugs. If I am fishing from a pier and I decide to fish bait, it's only because of the time of year it is, where the bait is, and what's actually happening within the season. Like if I get word or understand or remember that I should be at XYZ dock or pier at XYZ time because I previously fished there, and this is what we did there. That's why it's good to have a log, or nowadays a cloud. You can kind of review the cloud and remember where you were, what you were doing. But if I look at the log or the cloud and see that, okay, this is where I was and this is what I was doing, then that would be a good reason. Or, you know, just plain and simply, if plugs aren't working and they only want live bait and they only want cut bait, then I pretty much have a good idea of which piers or which docks I could fish for them for at that time of the season. Well, all right, well, that's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please continue to stay tuned to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave that in the comments below. If you would like for me to make any types of videos for this off season, again, please let me know in the comments below. As long as it's something that I have done or can do, I will definitely make that video for you guys. All right, so please remember to have a blessed day and peace out.